The rain fell in sheets that night, drumming against the zoo's roofs like war drums. Power flickered, alarms wailed, and deep inside the African savanna exhibit, lightning carved streaks of white across the sky. In the chaos, a small shadow slipped through a forgotten gate. A puppy, lost and frightened, running toward the only faint light he could see. That light led him straight into the lion's den. Staff raced through the storm, radios crackling. "Code Amber! Animal breach!" But before anyone could reach them, before tranquilizers could be loaded, or barriers raised, the impossible had already happened. The lioness, Aurora, the one who hadn't roared in years, was lying down. And in the curve of her massive body, the trembling puppy slept, safely beneath her paw. That storm didn't just shake the zoo. It shattered every belief about fear, instinct, and love. Because sometimes, when lightning strikes, it doesn't destroy. It awakens. The fog rolled thick and low over Evergreen Zoo that morning, wrapping the metal gates in a cold, silvery haze. It was just past 6, too early for visitors, too quiet for commotion, when security guard Paul Hendricks noticed a flicker of movement through the mist. At first, he thought it was a stray animal, maybe a raccoon sniffing for scraps left by the concession stands. But then the shape wavered, steadied, and became unmistakably human. A small figure stood at the front gate, trembling from head to toe. Her hair hung in tangled strands over her face. Her coat, if it could still be called that, was torn at the sleeves. In her arms, she clutched a cardboard box so tightly that her knuckles had gone white. Paul's breath caught. He called softly to his partner. "Diane, there's a kid out there." The girl didn't move even as the guards approached. She looked frozen in place, as if fear itself had rooted her to the ground. When they drew closer, Paul saw her lips moving, but no sound came out. Just the faint puff of her breath mixing with the fog. He crouched down slowly, his voice low and gentle. "Hey there, sweetheart. Are you lost?" No answer. He tilted his head toward the box. "What have you got there?" The girl's arms tightened protectively around it. The box shuddered once, twice, and from inside came a faint, broken whine. Diane gasped softly. "Oh my God, there's something alive in there." Paul held out his hands, careful not to startle her. "Honey, it's okay. We're not going to hurt you. Can I see what's in the box?" The little girl hesitated, eyes darting between them. Then, with trembling fingers, she loosened her grip and held the box out a few inches. Paul lifted the flap. Inside lay a tiny German Shepherd puppy, no more than a month old. Its ribs showed through its thin fur, its breathing shallow and uneven. The cardboard beneath it was damp and stained. When the cold air touched its skin, it whimpered softly and curled into a tighter ball. Paul swallowed hard. "Diane, call Dr. Brooks, now." Dr. Amelia Brooks, the zoo's senior veterinarian, was already on site preparing for an early surgery. Within minutes, she arrived at the gate, pulling her coat tighter against the morning chill. She expected an injured stray. She didn't expect this. The fog parted as she stepped forward. The little girl stood stiffly, eyes wide and hollow. The box in Paul's hands seemed to shake harder as the puppy's breathing hitched. Dr. Brooks knelt beside it, her trained composure cracking just a little when she saw the animal's condition. "He's just a baby," she whispered. Her hands moved quickly, checking pulse, gums, hydration. The pup gave a weak whimper. She could feel its heartbeat fluttering frantically against her palm. "He's dehydrated, malnourished. Severe hypothermia risk," she murmured to herself. But when she looked up at the girl, those thin arms covered in bruises, fingers trembling so violently she could barely hold the cocoa cup Paul offered her, Dr. Brooks realized the puppy wasn't the only one in danger. "What's your name, sweetheart?" she asked softly. The girl didn't answer. She just stared at the puppy as though afraid it might vanish if she looked away. Her lips were pale, cracked from cold. When Dr. Brooks gently reached out to touch her shoulder, the girl flinched so sharply it broke the woman's heart. "It's all right," Dr. Brooks said, keeping her voice steady, warm. "You're safe here. We'll take care of him, I promise." The child blinked up at her, suspicion and hope warring behind her eyes. "Would you like some warm cocoa?" A faint nod. Paul hurried inside, returning with a steaming paper cup. The girl's small fingers wrapped around it, trembling as she took a sip. The warmth brought a hint of color to her cheeks. For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sounds were the wind through the trees and the puppy's weak breathing. Then, the girl's voice came out as a whisper so soft they almost missed it. "Please, don't hurt him." Dr. Brooks met her gaze and felt a weight settle in her chest. A knowing that this wasn't just a frightened child and a lost dog. This was trauma etched into flesh and bone. She reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind the girl's ear. "No one's going to hurt him, or you, okay? My name's Dr. Amelia. What's yours?" The girl hesitated, glancing down at the puppy again, before murmuring, "Lily." "That's a beautiful name, Lily. And what about him?" Her small hand brushed the puppy's head. "Shadow," she said quietly, "because he always follows me." Dr. Brooks smiled, even as tears threatened to sting her eyes. "Shadow, that's perfect." She motioned to Paul. "Let's get them both inside. The animal care wing, quickly." The security guard lifted the box, careful not to jostle the puppy. Lily followed close, one hand gripping the hem of his jacket, as if afraid he'd vanish into the fog. Inside the warm lights of the veterinary unit, the world looked softer, but no less fragile. The scent of antiseptic mixed with the damp earth clinging to Lily's clothes. Nurses hurried to prepare heating pads, IV fluids, and a tiny oxygen line for the pup. Dr. Brooks worked silently, methodically, but her heart was breaking. Every detail, the makeshift collar of torn rope, the way Shadow whimpered at sudden noises, told a story of neglect and fear. When she looked up again, Lily stood outside the glass divider, her cocoa untouched, watching everything with wide, unblinking eyes. The glass reflected the fluorescent lights, framing her like a ghost on the other side of grief. Dr. Brooks finished the IV setup, then stepped out to kneel beside her. "He's going to be okay," she said softly. "He just needs warmth and rest. You did the right thing bringing him here." Lily's eyes filled, but she blinked the tears away before they could fall. "He was crying all night," she whispered. "I didn't know where else to go." Dr. Brooks gently placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You're very brave, Lily. Both of you are." For the first time, the little girl's lips quivered into something that almost looked like a smile. Outside, the fog began to lift. Sunlight pushed through, painting the wet pavement in pale gold. Inside, the heartbeat monitor of a tiny puppy kept a fragile rhythm, steady, alive. Dr. Brooks stood there a long moment, her hand resting on the glass. On the other side, Shadow stirred faintly, his paw twitching as if searching for something familiar. Without hesitation, Lily pressed her small hand against the glass directly opposite his paw. The paw stilled, resting against the barrier that separated them. In that single moment, girl and dog, each battered by the same invisible storm, something unspoken passed between them. Safety, trust, the first fragile spark of healing. Dr. Brooks turned away, blinking hard. "Let's get them both warm," she whispered to herself. And outside, the zoo stirred awake, not yet knowing that before the day was over, this quiet, trembling child and her fragile puppy would set in motion a story that would touch hearts around the world. The sterile hum of the emergency care room filled the quiet like a low heartbeat. Machines clicked and sighed. The smell of antiseptic lingered in the air, sharp, clean, but almost suffocating. Behind a pane of reinforced glass, Shadow lay on a padded table surrounded by soft light. His tiny chest rose and fell in shallow rhythm as tubes and wires traced across his body. Two veterinary nurses moved with quiet urgency, their hands gentle but precise. On the other side of the glass, Lily sat on a small stool, knees drawn to her chest, cocoa cup cooling in her hands. Her eyes never left him. Every time the pup flinched, she flinched too. Every time his heart monitor beeped a little faster, her own heartbeat seemed to race with it. Dr. Amelia Brooks stood near the doorway, watching the girl. In 15 years as a veterinarian, she had seen countless rescues, animals hurt, abandoned, starved. But something about this child's stillness unsettled her. It wasn't the fear of a moment. It was the silence of someone who had learned that speaking only brought more pain. The door opened softly. A woman in a tan coat entered, holding a notepad against her chest. "Dr. Brooks?" she said quietly. "I'm Officer Dana Wells, Child Protection Services. You called?" Dr. Brooks nodded and stepped closer, speaking low enough not to startle Lily. "She hasn't said much. Her name's Lily. She's been watching the dog since we brought them in. The bruises on her arms and neck, they're old and new both. I didn't want to push her until you arrived." Dana's expression softened as she crouched near the girl. "Hi, Lily," she said, her voice like the warmth of a fire. "That's a beautiful puppy you have there." Lily didn't move at first. Then, after a pause, she whispered, "His name's Shadow." "That's a nice name." Dana smiled gently. "He's very brave, isn't he?" A small nod. The woman sat down beside her on the cold bench, leaving a respectful space between them. "Can you tell me where you and Shadow came from, sweetheart?" For a long moment, the only sound was the soft hiss of oxygen from inside the room. Lily's fingers tightened around the cocoa cup. "We lived in the woods," she said finally, barely audible. "The woods?" "Yeah, in a cabin. It was small, cold all the time." Her voice trembled. "He said we didn't need anyone else." Dana's pen hovered above the page. "Who said that?" The child's lips pressed into a thin line. Her gaze shifted back to the table, to the pup's still body. "The man," she murmured. "The old man." Dr. Brooks watched from a distance, her stomach tightening. Through the glass, she turned back to Shadow's IV line, checking the drip rate. Anything to keep her hands moving as the truth unfolded nearby. Lily's words came in halting pieces, like fragile glass fragments she was afraid to touch. "He didn't like noise. If I dropped something, he'd get mad. Sometimes he'd kick the chair. Sometimes he'd—" Her voice cracked. "Sometimes he'd hit Shadow." Dana leaned closer, voice barely a whisper. "He hit Shadow?" Lily nodded, her small hands trembling. "Shadow didn't understand. He'd bark. That made him angry. So I tried to make Shadow quiet. I'd hold him under the blanket, so he couldn't bark." Her eyes glazed over, lost in memory. The room smells of smoke and alcohol. A half-empty bottle crashes against the wall, shattering. A man's voice bellows, hoarse, angry, slurred. Lily, no more than 6, crouches behind an old couch, clutching the squirming puppy against her chest. The puppy whimpers softly, tail tucked. "Shh," she whispers, tears streaking her cheeks. "Please, Shadow, please be quiet." The footsteps grow louder. The old man shouts something unintelligible. A belt snaps through the air. Back in the present, Lily's small shoulders shake, though no tears fall. She looks through the glass again. Shadow lies still under the warming lamp. He always took care of me, she says softly. When I cried, he'd lick my face. When it got cold, he'd curl up on my feet so I could sleep. Dr. Brooks feels her throat tighten. She looks down at Shadow's tiny legs, the faint indentations of rope burns visible beneath the fur. His paws twitch as if reliving some memory of fear. Dana's tone remains calm but sorrowful. Lily, what made you leave? The girl's voice lowers, the words trembling. One night he got angry because I spilled his drink. He threw the chair. Shadow tried to bite him. Dr. Brooks closes her eyes for a second, imagining it. The flash of rage, the terrified pup, the girl's scream. He grabbed Shadow by the neck, Lily continues, her voice breaking for the first time. He was yelling. I thought he was gonna kill him. I hit him with a pan. Then, I ran. The cocoa cup slips from her hands, spilling across the tile, forgotten. I ran through the woods. It was so dark. Shadow followed me. I didn't know where to go. Then I saw lights, the road, and cars. I kept walking till morning. The child protection officer scribbles something, but even her professional facade wavers. You did the right thing, Lily, she says, voice trembling slightly. You saved both your lives. Lily hugs her knees. He'll find us, she whispers. No, sweetheart, Dana says firmly, reaching out to rest a hand gently on the girl's back. Great Sama. Medium. You're safe now. No one here will let that happen again. Through the glass, Shadow stirs weakly under sedation, his small ears twitching at the sound of her voice. Dr. Brooks finishes her notes, her own chest heavy. She turns to Dana. He's stable, weak, but he's fighting. He's got scars on his neck, looks like rope or wire, and he flinches at sudden movements. He's been through everything she just described. Dana nods, her eyes moist. Same story. 2 bodies. The vet wipes a hand over her face. Sometimes, I think animals carry the pain for us, until we're ready to heal. Lily rises slowly from the stool, drawn closer to the glass like a moth to light. She presses both palms flat against it, staring at Shadow. On the other side, the puppy, half asleep under medication, twitches at her presence. Then something happens that makes everyone in the room still. Shadow's paw, weak, trembling, lifts. He presses it against the same spot on the glass, exactly where Lily's small hand rests. Her breath catches. The tears she'd been holding back finally break free, tracing silent rivers down her cheeks. She leans her forehead to the glass, whispering, It's okay, boy. We're safe now. Dr. Brooks stands motionless behind her, her heart cracking open. Even the machines seem quieter, as if the room itself understands. In that fragile silence, 2 beings, 1 child, 1 animal, connected by the same scars, breathed in rhythm for the first time. For the first time in too long, they weren't alone. Dawn crept slowly over the African savanna exhibit at Evergreen Zoo, painting the wide enclosure in a wash of pale gold and muted blue. Mist hovered above the dry grass, and the silhouettes of acacia trees stretched long across the artificial landscape. The air smelled faintly of earth and iron, the scent of a world recreated, not born. In the center of it all, beneath a large man-made rock outcrop, lay Aurora, the zoo's oldest lioness. Her tawny fur caught the soft light like dusted bronze, but her body barely moved. She wasn't sleeping. Not really. She just existed, her golden eyes half open, fixed on nothing. The morning routine began around her. Keepers unlocking service gates, the quiet hum of the feed truck, distant chatter from the bird sanctuary waking up. But none of it reached her. Aurora didn't twitch, didn't growl, didn't even lift her head. She used to roar once, years ago. Now only silence remained. Marcus Hale, senior zookeeper, leaned against the metal railing, coffee cup warming his hands. He'd been with the zoo 23 years, long enough to remember Aurora's arrival. A frightened, underweight lioness seized from a traveling circus shut down for cruelty. He studied her now, his heart heavy. "She's alive," he murmured to himself, "but she's not living." Behind the viewing glass, the zoo was still closed to visitors, but soon the families would come. And when they did, they would see only a lioness lying motionless in the dirt, staring at a world that wasn't hers. Marcus set his cup down and opened his notepad, flipping through weeks of behavioral logs. Each day identical: minimal activity, refused enrichment, ignored food puzzle, minimal social interaction. He sighed and closed it. The data told one story, the silence told another. Aurora's world had once been a cage on wheels, not much larger than the transport crates now used for house cats. Bars rusted with age, the air thick with sweat and smoke. A man in a red jacket cracked a whip, shouting in a language she didn't understand. The lights were blinding, white, hot, endless. Music thundered, and she ran, always ran. She leapt through hoops engulfed in flames, each one licking close enough to singe her fur. The roar of applause followed, but the sound meant nothing. It wasn't joy. It was fear dressed up for entertainment. Later, in the dark behind the tent, she would collapse on the sawdust floor, trembling. The man would toss her scraps of meat, never looking her in the eye. Sometimes he hit her when she hesitated to perform. Sometimes he didn't have to. The sound of the whip was enough. That was the life Aurora had known for 7 years, performing, pleasing, surviving. A gust of wind rustled through the trees, dragging Marcus back to the present. Aurora's ears flicked once at the movement, then stilled. He stepped closer to the glass, his reflection hovering faintly over her still form. "Morning, girl," he said softly. His voice carried no expectation. He had tried everything over the years: toys, scents, recorded lion roars from the wild. None of it had stirred her for long. She had food, safety, even a small pride nearby. But Aurora didn't seek them. She stayed here, under her tree, as though the invisible chains from her circus days were still wrapped tight around her. A shadow crossed the exhibit, the first visitor of the day. A little boy, holding his mother's hand, pressed against the viewing glass. His breath fogged it up as he peered inside. "Mom," he whispered, "why doesn't the lion move?" His mother hesitated. "Maybe," she said softly, "maybe she's sad." Marcus's throat tightened. He wished the woman wasn't right, but she was. Aurora wasn't just old or lazy. She was grieving something no one could give back. The boy tapped the glass once. Aurora's eyes flickered in his direction, just for a heartbeat, before drifting away again. "Come on, honey," the mother said gently, pulling him along. "Let's go see the penguins." Their voices faded. The enclosure returned to silence. From the observation deck above, Dr. Amelia Brooks approached, clipboard in hand. Her boots crunched softly against the gravel path. "Any change?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Marcus shook his head. "She didn't eat dinner," pushed the meat aside again. Dr. Brooks frowned. "That's 4 days in a row." "5," Marcus corrected quietly. "I've been keeping count." She looked through the glass, the lioness lying still, eyes half closed, chest barely rising. "We've tried everything," she murmured. "Her blood work's normal. No infections, no injuries. Physically, she's fine." Marcus gave a bitter laugh. "Yeah, the body's fine. The soul's gone." The vet nodded slowly. "It's like she left herself somewhere long before she came here." For a moment, neither spoke. The morning sun climbed higher, warming the dew on the grass. A pair of sparrows darted between the rocks, chirping. Aurora didn't move. "I've seen animals shut down before," Dr. Brooks said finally. "But not like this. It's as if she's afraid of being happy." Time 700 and Marcus's gaze softened. Maybe she doesn't know what that feels like anymore. Inside the enclosure, the other lions stirred, two young males wrestling lazily near the feeding trough. One of them nudged a ball toward Aurora with his paw, a half-hearted invitation. It rolled to a stop beside her leg. Aurora didn't react. The young lion huffed, confused, then turned away. The ball stayed where it was, glinting faintly in the sun, a symbol of play in a place where play had no meaning. Dr. Brooks jotted something down in her notes. "I'll adjust her enrichment schedule again," she said. "Maybe scents from her old range. Grass, soil, wildebeest hide. Something natural." Marcus gave a weary shrug. "You can try, but I think what she's missing isn't in any bottle or crate." He looked down at the lioness, his voice quiet. "What she's missing is purpose." The day wore on. Visitors trickled in. Children laughed by the meerkat habitat. Cameras clicked. But in the savanna enclosure, time seemed to stand still. Every few hours, Aurora would shift positions slightly, a movement so small it was almost imperceptible, and then settle again. The keepers knew her routine by heart. Lie still through the day, rise briefly at dusk, eat if coaxed, return to silence. But no one ever heard her roar. As the afternoon sun dipped low, Marcus stood once more by the glass, hands in his pockets. He studied her, thinking not as a keeper, but as a man who'd seen too much quiet suffering. "You know, girl," he said softly, "I wish you could tell me what you need." For the briefest moment, Aurora's tail flicked once, slow and deliberate, as if she'd heard. Then the stillness returned. Marcus exhaled and turned to leave, whispering, words that hung in the air like a prayer. "She's alive, but she's not living." Behind him, the lioness blinked, once, twice, and lifted her head ever so slightly, her dull eyes catching the last rays of dying sunlight. The light shimmered there for a heartbeat, like a memory of something long forgotten. The corridors of Evergreen Zoo's veterinary wing were never silent. Even after hours, faint hums of machines and the rhythmic beeps of monitors filled the dim hallways like the quiet pulse of a living heart. Yet tonight, another sound began to echo, soft at first, uncertain, then rising, trembling through the cold air like a memory calling out for comfort. It was Shadow. The little German shepherd pup had been recovering for 4 days now. His strength was slowly returning, but so were his nightmares. Each night, when the lights dimmed and the building fell into its nocturnal hush, his restlessness began, whimpers that grew into short, sharp barks. His paws twitched as if running from something unseen, as though the ghosts of his past still chased him through the dark. Dr. Amelia Brooks was reviewing notes in her office when she heard the sound. She recognized it instantly. That fractured bark, the sound of fear trying to defend itself. She sighed softly, setting her pen down. "He's dreaming again," she murmured. In the isolation room, Shadow's small body trembled under the thin blanket. The nurse on duty, a young keeper named Ella, gently approached his crate. "Hey, little guy," she whispered, crouching down. "You're safe now, remember?" But the puppy only whimpered louder, pressing against the corner of his bedding, as if trying to vanish into it. Unbeknownst to them, Shadow's cries didn't stop at the vet wing. The sound traveled through the connecting service corridor, a narrow underground tunnel used by staff to move between animal care zones, and carried faintly into the African savanna exhibit on the other side. There, under the artificial tree where she always lay, Aurora stirred. For the first time in hours, her ears twitched. The faint echo reached her. Distant, muffled, but insistent. A young voice, not of her kind, yet heavy with a familiar vibration of fear and loneliness. She lifted her head slightly, nostrils flaring, eyes narrowing toward the concrete wall that divided her world from the vet facilities beyond. She had lived surrounded by silence for so long that the sudden intrusion should have unsettled her. Yet she didn't snarl, didn't shift away. She listened. The cry came again. A small, desperate sound. Aurora's chest expanded, and she released a deep, low rumble that rolled softly from her throat. It wasn't a roar. It was something quieter, older, a sound lions used for reassurance within their pride. It was the sound a mother makes to tell her cub she's near. By morning, the incident seemed forgotten, at least by the humans. Dr. Brooks arrived early, carrying a cup of coffee and her usual bundle of files. "Morning, Ella," she greeted as she passed the care room. "How's our fighter doing?" "Better," the young nurse said with a tired smile, "though he kept us up half the night barking. Poor thing couldn't rest." Dr. Brooks crouched beside the pen. Shadow lifted his head, tail wagging weakly at the sight of her. His ears perked, but his eyes were wide, darting around the room, searching for something, or someone, unseen. "It's okay, boy," she whispered, offering her hand. "No one's going to hurt you now." He licked her fingers, but his gaze remained restless. Every few seconds his head would tilt toward the corridor, as if he could still hear something calling him back. Across the zoo, the keepers on the early shift were already talking. Marcus Hale entered the staff lounge with his usual dry humor. "So, apparently, Aurora had a restless night too," he said, pouring coffee. "Security camera picked her up pacing near the back wall around 3 a.m. First time I've seen her move more than 5 feet on her own." One of the junior keepers chuckled. "Maybe she's haunted. Or maybe the hyenas finally got to her." Marcus smirked, but didn't laugh. "No hyenas here, kid. Something's got her attention, though." Dr. Brooks happened to walk in just then, still reviewing Shadow's vitals. "Aurora?" she asked. "She was pacing?" "Yeah," Marcus said. "Odd thing is, it wasn't random. She was walking slow, head low, right along the wall that connects to the vet building, almost like she was tracking something." Dr. Brooks paused, brow furrowing. "That's interesting timing." "What do you mean?" Marcus asked. "Shadow's been crying at night. Not just noise, it's distress, trauma flashbacks. It started the same time Aurora began reacting." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You're saying the lioness is responding to a puppy she's never seen?" "I'm saying animals are often more aware than we are." Marcus chuckled softly. "Guess our girl's got a fan, huh?" Dr. Brooks didn't smile. "Or maybe," she said quietly, "she's remembering what it's like to care." That afternoon, the zoo grew livelier. School groups passed through the paths, voices bright and excited. But Aurora barely moved. Her body rested beneath her tree, yet her eyes were not dull today. They followed the keepers as they walked behind the walls, especially when one passed near the tunnel that led to the vet wing. Her ears flicked, head lifting slightly. It was subtle, but Marcus noticed. "Well, would you look at that?" he said quietly to Dr. Brooks. "The old girl's actually awake before noon." Dr. Brooks watched closely. Aurora's gaze was fixed not on them, nor on the open plain of her exhibit, but toward the solid, concrete barrier behind her, the direction from which Shadow's cries came each night. "She's listening," the vet whispered. "To what?" Marcus frowned. "To someone who understands her silence." That evening, after closing time, the zoo fell still again. The fading sunset bled gold into violet over the treetops. Inside the vet wing, lights dimmed to a gentle glow. Dr. Brooks checked Shadow one last time before heading home. "Rest now, little one," she murmured. "You've earned it." She left a small toy beside him, a plush lion cub from the gift shop, before switching off the lights. Shadow circled once, sighed and settled down. His eyes drifted shut. A faint whimper escaped his throat. The memory of the old man's shouting echoing in dreams only he could see. Then, as if on cue, from across the walls and corridors, a sound answered him. A low, rumbling chuff. Deep, steady, reassuring. It reverberated through the concrete and steel, barely audible to human ears, yet unmistakable in its intention. Shadow's ears twitched. His breathing slowed. The pup relaxed, curling tighter into his blanket, the tremor leaving his small body. In the darkness of the savannah enclosure, Aurora had turned her face toward the veterinary wing, eyes open in the moonlight. Her chest rose and fell with quiet rhythm. Another soft chuff escaped her, gentler this time, a whisper meant for no one, yet heard by the one who needed it most. The staff would joke the next morning that their lioness had a fan club. But Dr. Brooks, as she watched the monitors that recorded Aurora's nightly movements, didn't laugh. She saw the pattern, the pacing, the listening, the moments of stillness that coincided perfectly with the puppy's cries. She didn't see coincidence. She saw connection. An invisible thread had begun to weave itself between two broken souls, one scarred by human cruelty, the other by the loneliness of captivity, each reaching for something they didn't yet understand. Somewhere, in the spaces between their walls, healing had already begun. Rain came early that morning, not in a gentle drizzle, but in a relentless downpour that soaked the pathways of Evergreen Zoo until they shimmered like sheets of liquid glass. The air smelled of wet earth and steel. Drops tapped against the enclosures, echoing through the empty walkways. In the veterinary wing, lights flickered to life as staff arrived, jackets dripping, radios crackling, coffee cups steaming. The zoo wasn't yet open to the public, but inside life was already stirring. Shadow had grown stronger in the weeks since he first arrived. His ribs were no longer visible beneath his sleek black and tan fur, and the once timid pup had begun exploring his small pen with restless energy. He had toys now, a squeaky ball, a soft blanket, but even those couldn't contain the surge of curiosity that lived in him. He wanted to run. He wanted more than walls. That morning the maintenance crew was making rounds, repairing drain covers and tightening bolts along the service corridor near Shadow's room. Rain pounded against the tin roof as they worked quickly, muttering about the storm and the schedule. "Latch looks fine," one of them said, giving it a quick tug. The metal squeaked, but held. They moved on, unaware that the mechanism hadn't locked properly. Inside, Shadow's ears twitched. He could smell them, the damp scent of rubber boots, the metallic tang of tools, the faint musk of rain-soaked humans. His head tilted, curiosity peaked. Then came a sound, a faint click as the door latch shifted. The pup padded closer, nose pressing against the seam. The gap was small, barely enough for a paw, but curiosity was stronger than caution. His claws hooked the edge. He pulled. The latch wobbled, creaked. Outside, thunder rumbled. No one heard the faint clink as the bolt slid halfway open. Shadow froze. His heart raced, not from fear, but from instinct. Something deep in him whispered of freedom, of open air, of running until the past couldn't follow. He pawed again, harder this time. The latch gave way. The door swung open just enough for a puppy to slip through. For a moment, he hesitated, ears perked, eyes wide, then bolted. A blur of fur and wet paws vanished into the hallway. By the time Dr. Amelia Brooks arrived 15 minutes later, the chaos had already begun. "Dr. Brooks," a voice called as she entered. "We've got a code amber. Breach in the containment wing." Her heart lurched. "What animal?" The tech swallowed hard. "The puppy. Shadow. He's out." The words hit her like a punch. Oh no. She didn't wait for an explanation. She sprinted down the corridor, the soles of her boots splashing against puddles as the alarm blared overhead. Her mind raced faster than her feet. Shadow was small, clever, but naive. The zoo was vast, full of enclosures and service routes, and beyond the vet wing, separated only by a few doors and hallways, was the African Savannah Zone, home to Aurora. Her voice came sharp and fast through the radio. Seal the exits. Check all service corridors, waste routes, and ventilation shafts. He couldn't have gone far. Copy that, a guard replied. We've got eyes on security cam feeds now. Stand by. Dr. Brooks reached the control room, breathing hard. The monitors flickered in grayscale. Rows of corridors, gates, empty walkways blurred by rain. Then one camera caught a streak of movement, a dark flash slipping behind a stack of crates. There, she pointed. Zoom in. Time to 1,700 palms. The operator did. The image sharpened. It was him, Shadow, tail down, moving fast, nose to the floor, following invisible trails only he could sense. He's headed north, the tech said, toward the Savannah section. Dr. Brooks's blood ran cold. That's Aurora's enclosure. Outside, the zoo's emergency siren wailed. Code Amber, containment breach in progress. Staff raced through the rain. Radios buzzed. Gates slammed shut. Visitors at the main entrance, a few early arrivals, were ushered back to the parking lot. Marcus Hale ran through the downpour toward the African exhibit, his jacket plastered to his back. You've got to be kidding me, he muttered. A puppy? In this weather? He skidded to a stop near the staff gate, fumbling with his keys. Control, this is Hale. I'm at the north service door. Opening now. Copy that, Hale. Keep eyes open. Dr. Brooks en route. The lock clicked open. Marcus pushed the gate, stepping into the dim maze of back corridors that led directly behind the Savannah enclosure. Water pooled beneath his boots, reflecting the red of the alarm lights. He moved quietly, scanning corners, calling softly. Shadow. Hey, boy. Come on out. Let's go home. No response. Only the sound of rain hitting the roof and the distant rumble of thunder. He advanced further, sweeping his flashlight beam along the floor. A small trail of paw prints glistened in the wet dust. He crouched down, touching one gently. Got a trail, he whispered into his radio, heading straight toward Enclosure 6. In the control room, Dr. Brooks's heart pounded as she watched the feed. Camera 18 flickered, the one covering the rear service gate of the lion exhibit. Then she saw it. A shadow darting between barriers. A small form disappearing through the partially open gate left ajar by the maintenance crew earlier that morning. Marcus, stop! He's in the lion zone! The radio crackled with static. Repeat. Shadow is inside Aurora's enclosure. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then chaos erupted. Lock down all perimeter gates. Get tranquilizers ready. Evacuate nearby staff. But Dr. Brooks didn't move toward the control switches. She froze, staring at the screen. The image on the monitor was grainy, blurred by the storm, but unmistakable. The little dog, barely a speck of movement, trotted into the wide, open enclosure. Beyond him, under the artificial tree, a golden shape lifted its head. Aurora. Dr. Brooks's hands trembled around the edge of the console. Dear God, she whispered. He's going straight to her. Marcus's voice crackled over the radio, breathless. I've got eyes on him. He's inside. I can't reach the gate without spooking her. Stay back, she ordered. Don't make any sudden movements. On the screen, Aurora was rising to her feet. Her enormous frame cast a shadow that dwarfed the tiny figure in the rain. Her ears flicked forward, her golden eyes catching the movement. Shadow paused, head tilted, tail stiff. Then he took a hesitant step closer. Don't do it, Marcus whispered into the radio. But the pup didn't stop. Lightning flashed, white and violent, illuminating the impossible scene. The tiny shepherd and the massive lioness, inches apart, staring at each other through the curtain of rain. Dr. Brooks's heart thundered. The entire control room held its breath. And then, the camera feed crackled, flickered, and went black. For several seconds, the only sound was the pounding rain and the echo of Dr. Brooks's whisper. "Oh, Shadow, what have you done?" Rain still fell in a thin, silvery curtain as Marcus Hale climbed the observation deck, overlooking the lion habitat. His radio crackled with static. The storm made every transmission cut in and out. But he didn't need words to understand the panic around him. He could feel it. The electric fear that threaded through every breath of the staff below. The moment his binoculars found focus, his heart froze. There, in the middle of the sprawling African savanna exhibit, stood Shadow, no larger than a house cat, beneath the towering rocks. His fur was soaked, clinging to his small frame, tail trembling behind him. And 20 feet away, rising slowly to her full, formidable height, was Aurora. The lioness's golden mane, faint but regal, rippled in the wind. Rain rolled down her flank in streams. She looked vast, ancient, and alive in a way Marcus hadn't seen in years. Her head tilted slightly, eyes burning like molten amber as she locked onto the tiny creature who had trespassed into her kingdom. "Control, this is Hale," Marcus said into his radio, voice tight. "Visual confirmed. Shadow's inside Aurora's enclosure. She's seen him." "Copy," came the operator's voice, shaking. "Tranquilizer team moving in." Dr. Amelia Brooks's voice cut through the channel. "Negative. Hold positions. Don't make a sound." Marcus's eyes darted toward the service path below. Through the rain, he saw her, running without an umbrella, lab coat plastered to her, hair soaked. She skidded to a halt beside the observation window, her face pale. "No darts," she whispered, breathless. "We move too fast. We'll spook her. We could trigger her instincts." Marcus swallowed hard. "Then what do we do?" Dr. Brooks didn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on the impossible sight unfolding below. Aurora stepped forward, one massive paw pressing into the wet soil with a soft thud. Her tail swayed low, her muscles coiling with quiet power. She moved with the silent precision of a predator, each step deliberate, her gaze unbroken. Shadow froze. He should have cowered, should have bolted for cover. But instead, he took one small step forward, head tilted, as if studying her face. His ears flattened, not in submission, but in a strange, trembling curiosity. Marcus could feel his pulse hammering against his ribs. "Come on, kid. Back up." Shadow didn't. He took another step, 10 feet, then 5. The rain softened for a moment, as though the storm itself was holding its breath. Aurora lowered her head. Her nostrils flared, taking in the scent of this strange intruder. A low rumble formed deep in her chest. Not a growl, but something older, softer. Dr. Brooks felt the hair on her arms rise. "She's not posturing," she murmured. "That's not aggression." Marcus's hand hovered over the tranquilizer case. "Doc, she could kill him with one swipe." "I know," she whispered, "but she's not going to." Aurora leaned in closer, her massive face now inches away from the trembling puppy. Shadow stood still, every instinct screaming at him to run. Yet something in her eyes rooted him there. They weren't the eyes of a killer. They were searching. Then, with infinite gentleness, Aurora inhaled deeply, her nose brushing the top of his wet head. Shadow blinked, startled by the warmth of her breath. He whimpered softly, a sound that was neither fear nor submission, but a fragile plea for understanding. The lioness responded. From deep within her chest came a sound that made Marcus's throat tighten, a low, rumbling chuff. The soft, breathy call lions use to greet their cubs. The sound rolled across the enclosure like thunder from a distant storm. Shadow's body relaxed. He inched forward again, tail wagging faintly. Then, in a motion that seemed almost unthinkable, he reached out one tiny paw and touched her nose. Time stopped. Dr. Brooks felt her breath catch, the world narrowing to that single moment of contact. The fragile paw against the enormous muzzle, the faint tremor in Aurora's whiskers as she accepted the touch. A whisper broke from Marcus. "Holy God!" Aurora blinked once, slowly, then lowered her head all the way to the ground. Her massive body sank into the wet soil, her front legs folding gracefully beneath her. The predator was gone. In her place was something else entirely, something ancient and tender. She exhaled a deep sigh, resting her chin on the earth beside the tiny pup. Her golden eyes softened, watching him with a calm that none of the staff had ever seen. Shadow, sensing no threat, circled once, just once, then curled against her chest. His trembling stopped. Within moments, he closed his eyes. The entire zoo went silent. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the radios quieted, as if words themselves had no place in what was happening. On the observation deck, Marcus lowered his binoculars slowly. His hands were shaking. She's letting him sleep," he whispered. Dr. Brooks's eyes glistened. "No," she said softly. "She's protecting him." The tranquilizer team stood frozen at the perimeter, rifles slack in their hands. One of the younger keepers, barely 20, wiped his face, unsure whether it was rain or tears. In the control room, security staff watched through the feed in stunned silence. One of the cameras caught the perfect angle, the massive lioness lying still, the small pup curled safely against her fur, both bathed in the dim silver of rainlight. Dr. Brooks pressed a trembling hand to her chest. "She's never done this before. Not with her pride. Not with anyone." Marcus swallowed hard. "It's like she remembers something." "She does," the vet said quietly. "She remembers love." For several long minutes, the only sound was the soft rhythm of rain against glass and the distant hum of the wind. Aurora's breathing slowed, deep and steady. Each exhale ruffled the pup's fur, each heartbeat syncing with his tiny chest. Shadow shifted once, nose burrowing deeper into her warmth. He gave a soft sigh, the kind that comes only from safety rediscovered. Dr. Brooks whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. "She's giving him what she never had, and he's giving her what she lost." Marcus turned away, blinking back tears. "You think they'll stay like that?" "I think," she said, her voice breaking just slightly, "they need each other too much to let go." The rain eased into a drizzle. Somewhere far away, thunder rumbled like applause. Inside the lion enclosure, a miracle breathed quietly beneath the dawn. Two broken souls, finding in each other the peace the world had stolen. And for the first time in 9 long years, the cameras recorded Aurora not as a caged animal, but as a mother. The sun rose over Evergreen Zoo in quiet disbelief. What had happened the night before, the encounter between a lioness and a puppy, still hung in the air like a whispered prayer. By dawn, the rain had cleared, leaving the grass glistening like spun glass. From the observation deck, the morning staff stood in silence, coffee forgotten in their hands. Inside the African savanna enclosure, Aurora and Shadow still lay together, two mismatched shapes in a golden pool of early light. When Dr. Amelia Brooks arrived, the staff parted without a word. She approached the glass slowly, her breath fogging the surface. Aurora was awake now. The lioness's great head was bent low, her massive tongue gently grooming the pup's fur. Each stroke was deliberate, rhythmic, an ancient ritual of care she'd never been taught, yet seemed born knowing. Shadow squirmed happily beneath her chin, licking her muzzle with puppy enthusiasm. Aurora's tail flicked, once, twice, in patient amusement. "She's cleaning him," whispered Marcus Hale, awe in his voice. "Like he's her cub." Dr. Brooks didn't reply. Her throat was tight. What she was witnessing defied everything she knew about animal behavior, and everything she thought she knew about broken souls. By midday, word had spread. The zoo director, reporters, animal psychologists, all had arrived to witness the phenomenon. But Aurora didn't seem to care about the attention. For the first time in years, she moved with purpose. When keepers rolled her feeding cart into the habitat, Aurora rose, shook out her mane, and approached the food. Instead of guarding it, she nudged a piece of meat toward Shadow, who pawed at it curiously before nibbling. She watched him, her golden eyes bright with pride, before eating her share. "She's sharing," said Dr. Brooks softly, barely believing it. "Lions don't share with other species. They barely share with each other." Marcus smiled faintly. Guess no one told her that. The transformation was visible not just in Aurora's behavior, but in her entire being. Her coat caught the sunlight again, sleek and shining. The dull vacancy in her eyes had vanished, replaced by alertness, by life. Even her posture changed. She stood taller, shoulders relaxed, her tail swishing slowly behind her like a dancer finding rhythm again after years of silence. The keepers couldn't take their eyes off her. Neither could the visitors who began gathering outside the exhibit. A small boy tugged on his mother's sleeve, pointing. "Mom! The lion's playing!" And she was. Aurora crouched low in the grass, eyes glinting, every muscle coiled. Shadow, watching her, barked once in surprise. Then she sprang, massive and graceful, landing just beside him, claws sheathed, tail flicking. The puppy yelped with glee and bounded away. Aurora followed, chasing without threat, each movement carefully measured. Her paws hit the ground with power and precision. It wasn't aggression. It was joy. Marcus whispered, almost reverently, "She's running." Dr. Brooks nodded, unable to speak. Her chest ached, not with fear, but with something she hadn't felt in a long time. Wonder. For years, Aurora had been a symbol of survival, a body that endured captivity but never lived within it. Now she was something else entirely. Something miraculous. Visitors wept openly as they watched the impossible dance unfold. The giant and the tiny, predator and prey, moving together in a choreography no human could have written. Over the next few days, the zoo became a place transformed. Researchers documented every interaction. Footage showed Aurora nudging Shadow gently when he grew tired, lying down so he could curl against her side. At feeding time, she would wait until he ate first. If he wandered too far, she chuffed softly, calling him back. Animal psychologists called it maternal reawakening, a phenomenon never before recorded between species so different. One of them, Dr. Patricia Chen, stood beside Dr. Brooks one morning, watching the pair. "You realize what we're seeing, right?" she said quietly. "That lioness isn't just nurturing, she's healing. Her instincts, the ones years of trauma suppressed, are coming back." Dr. Brooks nodded. "And so are his." She gestured toward Shadow, who now played freely, chasing Aurora's tail through the grass. The puppy who once cowered at loud noises now barked fearlessly, bounding after his guardian with pure delight. His gait had strength, his tail wagged high, his eyes shone with trust. "He's learning confidence," Dr. Chen said, "and she's learning love." But the most powerful moment came one quiet afternoon, when Lily returned. She had begged the social worker to bring her back, just once, to see her puppy. They arrived after closing hours, escorted by Dr. Brooks. The zoo was silent, except for the low hum of the lights and the distant calls of evening birds. When Lily reached the glass of the savannah viewing area, she pressed both palms against it, eyes wide. On the other side, Aurora lay under her favorite tree. Shadow nestled beside her, chewing on a stick. At first, neither noticed. Then Shadow's ears perked up. He turned toward the glass, tail wagging. "Shadow," Lily whispered, her voice cracking. "It's me." He barked once, high-pitched and joyous, scrambling to his feet. The noise stirred Aurora. The lioness lifted her head, her gaze landing squarely on the small figure beyond the barrier. Dr. Brooks's breath caught. Aurora rose slowly, towering above the puppy. She stepped forward, positioning herself between Shadow and the glass, between her cub and the outside world. For a heartbeat, everyone froze. Lily's eyes widened. She didn't move. Neither did Aurora. The lioness stood tall, regal, her gaze unwavering, not hostile still, but protective. Then something in her expression softened. Aurora's golden eyes flickered, catching the reflection of the trembling child beyond the barrier. Her head tilted, as if studying her. And then, softly, almost inaudibly, she chuffed. Dr. Brooks's throat tightened. "She's greeting her." The sound carried across the glass, a low, comforting vibration that made Lily's tears spill freely down her cheeks. Shadow pressed against Aurora's leg, looking from the lioness to the girl, confused but trusting. The lioness looked once more at Lily, then back down at the puppy, and gently nudged him forward, encouraging him to approach the glass. Lily dropped to her knees, pressing her forehead against the barrier. Shadow pawed at it from the other side, whining softly. And in that still, sacred moment, 3 souls, each scarred in different ways, met through the invisible divide. Aurora's body remained between them, a wall of strength and safety. Yet her eyes said everything words never could. "I will protect him. I understand you. We are the same." Lily smiled through her tears. "Thank you," she whispered. The lioness blinked slowly in reply. Dr. Brooks stood behind them, unable to move, her own eyes wet. Marcus watched from a distance, hat in hand, whispering to no one in particular. "If that isn't grace, I don't know what is." As the evening light dimmed, Aurora returned to her place beneath the tree, Shadow curling once again into her side. But something had changed forever. She was no longer the ghost of a circus lion, nor a creature defined by captivity. She was a mother, born not of blood, but of empathy. And beyond the glass, a little girl with a bruised past walked away lighter than she had arrived, knowing her friend was safe, and that somewhere in the heart of a lioness, she had found forgiveness too. The storm came without warning. One moment, the night over Evergreen Zoo was calm, wind whispering softly through the trees, lights glowing warm against the rain-dark sky. Then, suddenly, the heavens split open. A crack of lightning tore across the horizon, followed by a deafening roar of thunder that shook the ground beneath the enclosures. Within minutes, the rain turned violent. Sheets of water lashed against the glass viewing walls, flooding the pathways. Leaves swirled like ghosts in the air. The zoo's lights flickered once, twice, then died. Everything plunged into darkness. In the African savanna enclosure, Aurora stirred. Her ears flicked forward, golden eyes reflecting faint streaks of lightning that illuminated the sky. Her muscles tensed instinctively at the noise, the primal sound of chaos that reminded her of circus tents collapsing and crowds screaming. But this time, she wasn't alone. At her side, Shadow whimpered. The tiny German shepherd pressed himself against her chest, trembling violently. Each thunderclap sent a shiver through his small body, and each flash of light made him flinch, whining softly in panic. Aurora responded with a deep, low rumble from her throat, a sound that wasn't quite a growl, more a heartbeat spoken aloud. She shifted her massive body, curling around him until he disappeared beneath the shelter of her fur. Her tail curved protectively over him, like a shield. Another flash of lightning illuminated the scene, her enormous frame forming a warm fortress around the fragile creature beneath her. In the control room, emergency lights flickered weakly, powered by the backup generator. Security monitors blinked in and out, static cutting across the screens. "Power's gone in the Savannah block," a technician shouted. "Cameras are barely holding." Dr. Amelia Brooks leaned over the console, heart pounding. "Check the Lion. Enclosure. Where are they?" The screen steadied just long enough to show a dim, grainy image. The infrared camera painted everything in ghostly shades of gray. Aurora's shape appeared first, a massive shadow unmoving amid the chaos. Beneath her, the faint outline of a smaller figure. "Oh my God," whispered Marcus, who had rushed in beside her. "She's covering him." The room went quiet. Rain battered the windows outside. The storm howled like an angry sea, but in the flickering glow of the monitor, the lioness and the pup remained still, their silhouettes locked in an image that looked almost sacred. "She's keeping him warm," Dr. Brooks murmured. "She's keeping him safe." Across the zoo, alarms wailed, a mechanical shriek that cut through the night. The sound jolted awake those sleeping in the staff quarters, including Lily. She sat up abruptly, disoriented, the thunder booming like drums outside. Her first thought wasn't of herself. It was of him. Shadow. Her bare feet hit the cold floor as she stumbled toward the door, rain pelting her the moment she stepped outside. The wind ripped through her nightshirt, soaking her to the bone. She could barely see the path through the downpour, but she didn't stop. "Dr. Brooks!" she screamed, her voice drowned by thunder. "Don't take him away! Please don't take him!" Her small figure darted through the storm, lightning flashing overhead. A security guard spotted her sprinting across the courtyard and called out, "Lily, get back inside! It's not safe!" But she didn't listen. Her feet slapped against puddles, heart hammering in terror. She didn't understand the alarms or the codes, only that every time something bad happened, someone tried to take Shadow from her. Rate slower. Not again. Inside the control room, Dr. Brooks turned sharply as the door burst open. Lily stood there, drenched and shaking, her face streaked with tears and rain. "Please," she cried. "You can't let them hurt him." Dr. Brooks rushed to her, kneeling down. "No one's hurting him, Lily," she said gently, gripping the girl's cold hands. "He's safe. Look," she guided her toward the monitor. The grainy image filled the screen. Aurora lying still in the storm, Shadow tucked safely beneath her. Lily froze, staring. Her lips parted in disbelief. The lioness's outline pulsed softly in the lightning's flash. Powerful, calm, immovable. Shadow's small body barely visible beneath her. She's protecting him?" Lily whispered. Dr. Brooks nodded. "She's not just protecting him, sweetheart. She's protecting what she loves." Lily pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. "Like my mom used to do." The vet's eyes softened, the words cutting deep. "Exactly like that." Marcus placed a hand on Lily's shoulder. "He's okay, kiddo. That big cat's got him covered." The girl stared at the screen for a long time, tears mingling with the rain still dripping from her hair. Outside, the storm raged on, but in that small control room, everything felt still. Hours passed. The zoo remained locked down. Staff huddled in shifts, monitoring the fragile system of cameras and generators, watching over two creatures whose connection seemed to defy every law of nature. At one point, lightning struck close enough to shake the windows. The screen went black. Everyone in the room gasped. "Camera feed's down," shouted a tech. "Get it back," Dr. Brooks snapped. Seconds stretched into eternity before the image flickered to life again. Aurora hadn't moved. She still lay curled around the pup, her body rising and falling in slow rhythm. The rain had drenched her mane and darkened her fur, but she didn't flinch. Even when thunder cracked directly overhead, she stayed still, her heart the only barrier between the world's violence and the fragile life beneath her. Dr. Brooks whispered, almost reverently, "She's the calm inside the storm." By dawn, the worst had passed. The rain eased to a gentle drizzle, and light returned to the horizon, pale, uncertain, but real. Marcus and Dr. Brooks were among the first to reach the savannah enclosure. The air smelled of wet soil and ozone. Birds began to call again, tentative, testing the silence after the chaos. They walked slowly to the viewing glass, boots squelching in the mud. Inside, Aurora was still there. Her body was drenched, her fur heavy with water, but her posture was serene. Her great paw rested gently over the small, sleeping form of Shadow. His tiny chest rose and fell against her leg. Dr. Brooks exhaled shakily. She never left him. "She didn't even sleep," Marcus murmured. "She just stayed." Behind them, soft footsteps approached. Lily stood barefoot in the wet grass, eyes wide. She didn't speak. She only pressed her palm to the glass, tears slipping silently down her face. Inside, as if sensing her presence, Aurora stirred. She lifted her head, blinking slowly in the soft dawn light. Her gaze found the girl beyond the glass. And then she did what no one expected. She lowered her muzzle, pressing it gently against Shadow's back, then turned her eyes toward Lily. The gesture was unmistakable, a mother's reassurance, a promise. "He's safe," Dr. Brooks whispered. Lily nodded, her voice breaking as she whispered back, "Pitch them first." "Thank you." The three of them stayed there, human, lioness, and pup, separated by glass but united by something far stronger. The storm had passed, but its meaning lingered. Out of chaos had come connection. Out of fear had come faith. And as the first rays of sunlight broke over the wet earth, it wasn't the sky that seemed to brighten, but the faces of those who had witnessed the night the lioness guarded love itself. Morning sunlight spilled across the glass walls of the Evergreen Zoo conference room, but the air inside was far from warm. Tension sat like a fog over the long oak table where the board members gathered, each seat filled by faces tight with disbelief, concern, and cautious restraint. At the head of the table sat Dr. Amelia Brooks, hands clasped around a stack of files. Across from her, the zoo director, Robert Harrison, adjusted his glasses and sighed heavily. "We can't house a dog with a lioness," he said flatly. "It's unnatural, dangerous. You know the liability risks this poses." Brooks didn't flinch. "I know exactly what it poses," she said, her voice low but steady. "It poses the possibility of proving something the world has forgotten, that love and connection aren't bound by species or circumstance." A murmur spread around the table. One of the senior administrators, a woman in a charcoal suit, leaned forward. "With all due respect, Doctor, this isn't about sentiment. We're talking about a wild predator and a domestic animal. This is a ticking time bomb, not a fairy tale." Brooks slid a folder across the table. "Then look at the data before you call it that." Inside were charts, reports, and photos. Aurora playing with enrichment toys for the first time in years, her weight increasing to healthy levels, her cortisol levels dropping nearly 40%. And then the video stills. Shadow curled under her paw, both animals resting peacefully. She pointed at the numbers. Aurora's health markers have improved more in 2 weeks with Shadow than in 2 years of therapy, enrichment, and behavioral intervention. She's eating consistently, sleeping through the night, and showing stable emotional responses. Every expert I've consulted agrees. Separating them could trigger regression or even psychological trauma. The woman frowned. And the dog? Shadow's recovery is even more remarkable, Brooks replied. He was malnourished, traumatized, and unresponsive to human comfort. Now he plays, socializes, and demonstrates trust because she taught him how. There was silence for a moment. Only the hum of the projector filled the room. Then a quiet voice spoke. It was Marcus Hale, seated near the back. His uniform was still damp from the morning's work. He cleared his throat, looked around, and said softly, "They saved each other. Maybe they can save us too." Several heads turned. Marcus met their eyes one by one. "You all saw what happened last night. The cameras caught it. The storm, the power outage, her protecting him. That wasn't instinct. That was love. The kind you can't train or fabricate. We keep saying the zoo's purpose is education, empathy, conservation. But what better lesson could we teach the world than this?" The words hung in the air, echoing. The director leaned back, exhaling sharply. "Marcus, I respect what you've witnessed. But we run an accredited institution, not a fable. One mistake, one unpredictable moment, and we risk tragedy. For them and for us." Dr. Brooks leaned forward, her voice rising with conviction. "Then let's make it safe. Let's build something for them. Not just a cage, not a temporary compromise, but a sanctuary that allows their bond to continue under supervision. A controlled habitat, custom designed for both species." She paused, eyes locking with the director's. "We call it the Sanctuary of Hope." The room fell silent again. The name itself seemed to breathe through the walls. Hours passed. The debate grew heated. Voices rose, logic clashed with emotion. Words like liability, protocol, and ethics were thrown around like stones. One board member slammed his folder shut. "We can't build a facility for a fluke of nature. What happens when they fight? When she remembers she's a lion?" Brooks met his outrage with a calm fire. "And what happens if she doesn't? What if she's teaching us something we've been too blind to see? That healing doesn't follow the rules we write?" Across the room, Marcus added quietly, "They've already changed the staff. You've seen it yourselves. People who haven't smiled in years walk away from their enclosure crying. Kids stand there and feel something. Isn't that the kind of miracle we're supposed to protect?" His words softened the room like rain on a flame. Even the director hesitated. He rubbed the bridge of his nose, staring at the folder in front of him. The images of Aurora's massive paw draped over the small shepherd pup. Finally, he looked up. "If we do this, it'll have to be under strict monitoring. Full camera coverage, reinforced barriers, 24-hour supervision. No exceptions." Brooks nodded immediately. "Agreed. I'll head the project myself. The design team can collaborate with behavioral experts from the university. We can turn this into a research and educational model, not just for us, but for every zoo that believes rehabilitation ends with safety instead of wholeness." The director leaned back, eyes scanning the table. "Then let's put it to a vote." One by one, hands rose around the room. Some were hesitant, some firm. The final count came in, a narrow margin, but enough. Motion passed. News spread faster than wildfire. Someone from the staff leaked footage of Aurora and Shadow's storm night embrace to the press, and within 48 hours, it was everywhere. Television headlines, social media feeds, global news outlets. Lioness adopts orphaned puppy at Chicago Zoo, defying nature itself. Love beyond species, the story of Aurora and Shadow. Letters poured in from around the world, from children, veterans, teachers, and families. Crayon drawings arrived daily, envelopes scrawled with shaky handwriting. For Aurora and Shadow. One letter read, My mom says I can't have a dog, but I told her maybe we can visit the lion who does. The zoo's mailbox overflowed with donations, $5 bills from school kids, checks from retired teachers, even a corporate pledge to sponsor construction of the Sanctuary of Hope. Marcus stood by the enclosure one afternoon as workers measured the new site. A child's drawing was still taped to the glass. A lioness and a puppy beneath a rainbow. The words, "Their family." He smiled softly. "Guess the world decided," he murmured. Dr. Brooks joined him, weary yet luminous. "It wasn't science that changed their minds," she said. "It was empathy." He nodded. "Maybe that's the lesson we needed." Weeks later, the zoo transformed. Steel frames rose beside the savanna enclosure under a banner reading Sanctuary of Hope Project. From the observation deck, Aurora and Shadow watched side by side, the lioness tilting her head at drills, the pup barking before retreating to her paws. "They don't know it yet," Brooks said, "but we're building a home because of them." Marcus smiled. "Because of what they reminded us to be." When spring finally arrived, the air over Evergreen Zoo carried the scent of rain and magnolias. Morning sunlight danced on the glass panels of the new habitat, built not from steel alone but from faith, compassion, and thousands of letters from strangers who believed in a miracle. It was opening day for the Sanctuary of Hope. Beyond the barriers, a hushed crowd gathered, families, students, reporters, keepers, all witnesses to the story that had changed their lives. Even the cameras stayed quiet, as if before something sacred. Dr. Amelia Brooks stood at the gate, clipboard trembling slightly. Beside her, Lily clutched her fingers, hair longer now, scars fading, eyes bright with something new, hope. "You ready?" Amelia asked. Lily nodded. "I just want him to be happy." "He is," Amelia said softly. "And so are you." Inside, Aurora waited beneath the sunlight streaming through overhead panels, her coat a burnished gold, her muscles coiled yet calm. At her side stood Shadow, nose pressed to the gate, eyes alight with wonder. Marcus's voice came over the intercom. "All clear. Begin release sequence." The locks hissed. The gate rose inch by inch. Shadow barked once, startled, but Aurora brushed his shoulder gently, a silent reassurance before stepping forward. Her first paw print on the soil outside drew a soft gasp from the crowd. Sunlight poured over her, setting her coat ablaze. She paused, breathing in grass, water, freedom. Shadow bounded after her, tail wagging wildly, the tiny dog beside the great lioness, joy unguarded and pure. "There they are," Amelia whispered. "She's so beautiful," Lily said. "She always was," Amelia replied softly. "She just needed to remember." The new habitat stretched before them like a restored kingdom, meadows, trees, and a pond reflecting the morning sky. It met both their needs. Elevation for Aurora, hidden trails for Shadow. They moved together in harmony, her stride regal and deliberate, his darting with fearless energy. When he chased a butterfly too far, Aurora tensed, then softened, chuffing low to call him back. He turned instantly. The crowd exhaled as one. Even the reporters lowered their cameras, unwilling to break the moment's spell. A board member whispered, "I've worked here 30 years, never seen anything like this." Marcus nodded. "You're not supposed to. Some things you don't plan. You just protect when they happen." Aurora climbed the central rise and stood tall, wind lifting her mane. For a long moment she was still. Then she opened her mouth and roared, a deep, steady sound, more hymn than command. It echoed across the zoo like thunder, a song of triumph and rebirth. Shadow lifted his head and howled back, a small, imperfect echo that somehow completed her melody. The two voices merged, one vast, one fragile, into something that felt like healing. Amelia wiped a tear. Listen, she whispered. She's teaching him to speak her language. Marcus smiled. No, they're learning each other's. Down below, Lily pressed her palms to the glass. You're safe now, she whispered. And somehow, Aurora turned. Her gaze met Lily's through the light and reflection. Golden eyes, soft, knowing. She gave a single low chuff. Shadow barked. Lily smiled through tears. He heard me. So did she, Amelia said, resting a hand on her shoulder. The ceremony ended without speeches. None were needed. The image said it all. A lioness and a puppy walking into sunlight, their shadows long and intertwined. By morning, headlines would circle the globe, not about danger or curiosity, but about redemption. At Evergreen Zoo, a lioness and a dog show humanity what it forgot, that love is the strongest instinct of all. As the crowd dispersed, Amelia lingered, watching the pair vanish beyond the hill. Sometimes, she said softly, broken hearts find each other not to share pain, but to teach the world what love truly means. Marcus's eyes followed the golden silhouettes. Then the world's been taught by the best. The wind carried the last echo of Aurora's roar. Under the first full sun of spring, the sanctuary of hope had opened its gates, and two souls, once lost and once forgotten, stepped forward side by side into forever. Sometimes, stories like this remind us that love doesn't always speak in words. It shows itself in quiet moments. A wagging tail, a loyal gaze, the warmth of a creature that trusts you without question. German shepherds, especially, carry that kind of love deep in their hearts. They protect, they comfort, they understand, often before we even speak. If you've ever looked into your dog's eyes and felt that unspoken bond, you already know how powerful it is. And if you'd like to explore gentle ways to deepen that connection, to communicate, train, or simply understand your dog a little better, there's a wonderful resource I've been reading that might help. I'll leave it here for you to check out when you're ready. Take your time with it. No rush, no pressure. Just something that might bring you and your best friend even closer. Because in the end, it's not about commands or tricks. It's about trust, loyalty, and the kind of love that never leaves your side.